Week 6 is in the books. Week 7 is upon us. Maybe the wackiest week of the college football season. Definitely, I'll say, the wackiest week of what we've seen thus far in the 2024 college football season. Helping us trying to make sense of it all, or maybe bringing more madness to the airwaves. Our good friend, Jake Crain of Crain Company, he joins the show once again. Jake, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time as you do each and every single week with us. What's up?
Dude, this college football season is freaking bananas, man. Good, isn't it? Trying to bet this stuff, like with what's going on. I mean, it is. Last week it was nuts, but it's been drunk the whole time. This is the longest drunk I've seen college football, like, consistently. And it's great for the game. I mean, we could have a situation where we have the most playoff spots ever, and we have the most teams that could actually win a national championship ever. Because I don't think I've seen an elite team that can consistently have a quarterback available, or if you look at Ohio State, what do we really know about them with their schedule? So it's wild, man. It's just absolute madness, and it's fun to cover. It's just, dude, trying to project what's going to happen is just insane.
Jake, who do you think is more mad this week? Auburn fans watching Peyton Thorne, Tennessee fans watching the Vols play on the road, or Alabama fans watching Kaylin Deore wear a T-shirt on the sidelines?
Yeah, well, look, Auburn fans, this isn't a new movie. This is like the Fast and the Furious with Peyton Thorne. Like, it's really the same movie with the same ending, but they just repackage it in a different way. And this week, he plays good for 3 quarters against Oklahoma, but it falls off a cliff. Or this week, he throws 5 interceptions against Cal. Or this week, they really never had that big of a chance to win the game, even though they did make it close. But him and the coach are not on the same page. Auburn football is turning into a show that comes on after Gilmore Girls. That's what it's turning into. So really, for Auburn fans, it's like, it's another week of disappointment. It's just a different flavor of disappointment. Tennessee fans, I understand why they'd be upset. They got to take the training wheels off this thing at some point. Like, Nico, to me, looks like he's stuck where Jalen Milroe was early last season and trying to prove to everybody that he's a pocket passer instead of just taking chances, pushing the ball down the field, running, creating, not being afraid to kind of, go against the script of what's going on. But to me, I don't know how it's not Alabama fans, because we all know what Bear Bryant did. We all know what Nick Saban did. And Kaylin Deore comes in, and there's a lot of questions and maybe a little bit of insecurity deep down because he hasn't built up the equity that Saban did. Then you beat Georgia, right? You gave up a lead, but you beat Georgia. So you're sky high. Man, Kaylin Deore, we're not going to skip a beat. And then you lose. Then you're the number 1 ranked team, and you lose to Vandy.
And you get beat by Vandy. You
get beat. That's true. That wasn't a fluke, which makes it even worse. And you got to give Vandy their flowers. Like, this isn't your grandfather's Vandy team, but it's optics. It's perception. You lost to Vanderbilt at Alabama as the number 1 ranked team in the country. And I saw some Alabama fans on social media were like, well, Nick Saban lost to La Monroe in his first year.
Not the same.
You comparing that makes me worried that you have a driver's license if you do. Because the team that Kaylin Deore inherited compared to the team that Nick Saban inherited might as well be the actual Dallas Cowboys versus the actual Little Giants. That's how big of a gap in between those two teams there are. So if you're an Alabama fan, all that equity that Kaylin Deore earned by beating Georgia has now gone the opposite way. Now, nobody trusts you. And you committed one of the ultimate sins outside of losing to Auburn. You lost to Vanderbilt. You let the fat kid steal your girl. Like, that just, I don't know how you come back from that year 1. Like, it'd be different if this was year 5. Kaylin Deore won a national championship. Was runner-up in another one. Dog, this is 5 weeks in, 6 weeks in. Like, it's like old boy said on Feinbaum yesterday. These Bama fans, it's like the Soviet Union. If it ain't perfect, it ain't them. And to lose to Vanderbilt, this is a crashing down of a reality check. This is, you feel hoodwinked a little bit. Now, we'll see what happens the rest of the way. But if you're a Bama fan, it's like, what does Dewey Cox say? it's like the opposite of the time they caught him doing drugs in the bathroom. It's like it turns all your sad feelings into happy feelings. No, this game against Vanderbilt turned all those happy feelings into sad feelings.
Jake, I know you've said before to me that you can't kill what's dead inside, and so I know you're dead as an Auburn fan, but it had to tickle you a little bit. Again, I more so asked you that question because of the madness that is the T-shirt thing with Kaylin Deore. Like, fans are actually upset that he was it goes to show what losing does. It really does make everything else just unravel.
Yeah, it does.
I'm like, why do we care?
It's amazing. He was the cool uncle after he wore the T-shirt, against Georgia. He's the one that lets you stay up late and drink sodas, and like, but now it's like my wife. She literally, she's a huge Alabama fan. She's watching the game and she's like, I tell you the reason that we're losing. I was like, what, honey? She's like, because he lets them celebrate like that. Coach Saban would have never let him celebrate. And a little bit, I think she's right. But it's just, again, when you're winning, it's cool. It's hip, right? It's just like with Deion and Prime and them. When you're winning and you're saying all these things and acting this way, it looks super cool. But when you don't, they're coming back twice as hard, probably about stuff that's irrelevant, like what you're wearing.
I saw that too, Jake. It was somebody commenting on social media. The team performed like how Kaylin Deore dressed.
Yeah, it's because of the way he dressed.
I'm like, is this? Anyways, specifically to the game, Jake, we just mentioned that wasn't a fluke. Vandy beat Alabama. I mean, they led them from the start to finish. Diego Pavia is a legend, which I don't mean to rub salt in the wound, Jake, but he looked pretty good in an Auburn uniform. I know a team down in the Plains that would take him at quarterback. And
I love how you say I'm not going to rub. You're like Peyton Thorne. You're like I'm not going to rub salt in the wound, but here, open up. Here comes the salt. Peyton Thorne's like, I'm not going to get into specifics because that's going to hurt our team. But specifically, here's what happened.
Well, I mean, Jake, to everybody that says, well, you're more than a quarterback away, so why go get one? Well, Vandy went and got one. They just beat the number one team in the country. So you tell me. No, the specifics of this game, though, because to your point, Jake, like what's so interesting about these upsets, we do our very best on a week-in, week-out basis to talk ball. And I know you dive deeply into the X's and O's and scheme. And, like, if I would have told you let's just go back in time and I said, Jake, Vanderbilt is beating Alabama, I don't know that I could have given you real football reasons where you wouldn't have laughed me out of the room. Like, so explain it from the football. Like, how did Vanderbilt beat Alabama?
Well, when you look at the personnel they have, I mean, this is the best Vanderbilt's been personnel to even have somewhat close to a fair fight against a team like Alabama, right? I mean, per capita, Alabama has way better players across the board than Vanderbilt does, but only 11 can play at a time. I thought, what Vanderbilt did schematically in the run game and then it built off into the pass game was you got a lot of different looks out of heavy sets in the backfield that were kind of bastardized formations a little bit. You see UNLV do some of this with Brennan Marion, but you're basically running the triple option or a version of the wishbone or a version of the veer to be able to give Alabama so much eye candy that it negates the athletic ability advantage that they have over you somewhat. Not you turn a lot of stuff into one-on-one. Why do the the armies and the navies and the air forces, why do they run the triple option? Well, it's because they can't get the level of linemen in there consistently to be able to run a pro style, to be able to run a huge gap scheme system where the quarterback's not a runner, but he's a pocket passer and all this stuff is built off of it. They're doing that to make up for a disadvantage they have from a size standpoint and from a personnel ability standpoint. And Vanderbilt's not nearly as far off as they have been from Alabama with this team, but they use that to be able to slow down Alabama and have them look at so much that while they were looking, it took a split second off the reaction time. And you saw that bleed into the pass game. It turns a lot into of one-on-ones, right? One-on-one tackling, having to eliminate areas of conflict as a defense throughout the play. This spot, like triple option, right? Or the RPO, this spot we have to eliminate. Then that spot we have to eliminate. And because we've eliminated this spot and that spot, now we have a one-on-one situation here where we have to win that. I thought Tim Beck called the game of his life, and he had enough going laterally that he was able to get stuff going vertically. But still, to win this game, Vanderbilt needed what I call the three horses of the big upset. One, Lady Luck. That doesn't mean that you get lucky and the other team just plays bad, but the ball has to bounce your way in situations where you can take advantage of it in that moment, i.e. the pick six, right? That ball could have just been batted down and gone to the turf, but it popped up in the air right to the Vanderbilt player who caught it in stride, so he's able to go score a touchdown, right? So you do need some semblance of luck. Diego Pavia being able to get to his third read on 4th and 1 down the field, who just so happened to be wide open. The second thing you need is you need the joker. You need a wild card, a guy that can make plays that is grimy even when it goes off script. So if every play that you design is not going to work out perfectly. So when it turns into a backyard play, can the player be good enough to give you the advantage during that play? And Diego Pavia didn't have to do it a ton, but when he had to create, he was able to find ways to get first downs, especially on 3rd down. A lot of those creative plays were on 3rd down to extend the drive, which won you time of possession. But then the third horse to pull off the upset, you need the sensei. You need to be disciplined. You don't need to make mistakes, hit guys late out of bounds, make stupid penalties where maybe there was a turnover that you forced, but you lined up offsides, doing things that you may be playing better than the other team, but they're better than you. By eliminating the controllable mistakes, you make yourself more efficient, and you really put the onus on them to make the play. And I think Vanderbilt did that. You didn't have roughing the punters. You didn't have, a bunch of missed field goals or huge returns given up. So I feel like they had all three. They had Lady Luck, they had the Joker, and they had the Sensei, and they had the personnel that was close enough to be able to, if they put together a good game on the field and the coaches called a good game off of it, you could find a way to win that game if Bama didn't play their best. And it's not that Bama played their worst. They just didn't play great, and that's what Vanderbilt needed.
And at the end of the day, the goalpost is in the Cumberland River. Who'd have thunk
it?
Jake, let's go to the game that took place in Fayetteville. Again, I was at this game, rushed the field in post-game. We had a good time down there with the Hogs. I want to start in a place that most aren't, which is giving credit to Arkansas. I think it's really easy to jump straight to the Tennessee thing and what they didn't do and Nico, and we're going to talk about that. But I think what you saw with Arkansas, Jake, in my opinion, is that underneath all those self-inflicted wounds and mistakes is a pretty darn good football team. Like, when they're not shooting themselves in the foot, and I mean, Taylon Green played his best game to this point. Like, that team is dangerous. I said that going in. That's a dangerous football team. Kind of like, well, I was going to say kind of like Auburn. If they ever found a way to get out of their own way, they've got some ball players who can make some plays, and I think you saw that. Defensively, I mean, Travis Williams is a dog, their defensive coordinator. He's maximizing, I think, the talent. Again, Taylon Green played a game of his life. Malachi Singleton coming in and doing just enough to steady the ship, and that Braylon Russell kid on that last drive running like a madman. That being said, Jake, it's hard not to focus on what Tennessee didn't do because they were the top 5 team. Jake, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned the training wheels on Nico. I left that game, and I think he's going to be special too. But right now, Jake, Nico's pretty average. He's a pretty average quarterback right now. He's still a really young guy, which is okay. But he's pretty average right now. I'm surprised they're not stretching the field vertically more. And he missed a shot that he had. He had it open, I believe it was Squirrel White down the field. He missed a shot. You got to connect on those. I mean, we know what Tennessee, I think, is defensively and what Dylan Sampson can do, but it was like Tennessee fans' worst nightmare came to realization in Fayetteville. And I think we got to start questioning Josh Heupel in these road games because that seems to be where most of the troubles are.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of teams, overall tend to play worse on the road than they do at home. At first with Arkansas, I'm going to get to Taylon Green in a second, but I thought their offensive line was the most shocking performance of the week against a Tennessee defense that still played really well. I thought Tennessee defense, they weren't elite covering guys in man coverage, especially across the middle. But Tennessee's defense still gave them a chance. You had multiple 4th down stops. I mean, the game was 3-0 at halftime. I mean, what else do you want out of your defense? But the ability for Arkansas's offensive line to not only hold up, but finish the way they finished was vintage Arkansas. And I think you got to tip your cap to Sam Pittman because what's going to save his job is his hiring ability, right? Bringing in Bobby Petrino and Travis Williams. Right now, your coordinator game is absolutely on point. You're firing on all cylinders. And I think we are learning that maybe Taylon Green is the type guy where he may not be the best passer in every game, but he turns into a different thrower of the ball in most of the big games. I know against A&M, it was hard to say anything because the offensive line for Arkansas was so bad. Taylon Green really couldn't get anything going. But against Oklahoma State, I thought he threw the ball about as well as he could. Against Tennessee, I thought he threw the ball as well as humanly possible, as well as he could throughout a 4-quarter game. I mean, the touch passes, the back shoulders, the dropping in the bucket, the throwing the fastball, the keeping the play alive, running around and turning what should be a 2nd and 16 into a 2nd and 7. So Arkansas had to play really, really well at certain spots, and they did over time, even though, again, Tennessee shut them out. Now, multiple things can be true at once. You can give credit to Arkansas, and you should, especially the way they finished the game. But what is weird about Tennessee to me is it seems like, yeah, you have a young quarterback. We've talked about having to ride the wave of good and bad, but the bad should be that he's trying to do too much, not that he's not trying to do enough. Like with an older quarterback in that game against Oklahoma, if you're like, hey, we decided to play small ball there in the second half, an older guy's going to get that. I'm wondering, and I still think it was the right decision by Heupel on the road at Oklahoma. Just like I don't think it was crazy what he did at the end of this game after seeing what Arkansas was doing on offense. But at some point in the back of your mind as a quarterback, do you start to worry that, hey, maybe they don't actually believe in me to win the game? Maybe they actually think if I go out here and let it all hang out, I could lose us the game. And we always talk about not taking away a defensive player's stinger, right? A guy who goes in there and hits hard, trying to get him to stop because, you don't want targeting. There's a fine line to walk there. There's also a fine line to walk with quarterbacks. And it seems to me that Nico doesn't view himself as the reason they could win. He views himself as the reason they could lose. And I don't know if Josh Heupel views him like that, because there were play calls where guys were down the field. It's not like Tennessee isn't doing it, but it's like, Nico doesn't trust himself to do anything more than 15 yards down the field. And when you mix that with his lack of ability to want to run and take off and create, it's almost like he's either trying to prove something to everybody else or he's trying to prove something to himself. I don't know which one it is, but the fun has been gone in this offense. Like what kept people on their toes wasn't just the pace. It was that Tennessee at any point in time could hurt you in any three layers of the field. The deep third, the middle third, and obviously the line of scrimmage third, whether that's through the run game or through the quick game. So to me, it just seems like you put a governor on this offense and you're like, all right, well, you can say we're a defensive team and that's great. You want to be a well-balanced team. And part of having a well-balanced offensive diet is being able to take a shot every now and then and not being afraid to press the ball and get chunk plays. It just, I don't know. I don't know who to believe. Is it Josh doesn't believe in Nico late in the game, or does Nico not believe in Nico?
It's weird to watch a guy like Nico, Jake, sort of become like a game manager. That's what it feels, which is just strange because with his skill set, he is not that. I don't what the disconnect is. Let's go to College Station, Jake. Texas A&M blast Missouri. Who'd you learn more about, the Aggies or the Tigers?
I think I learned more about Mike Elko than anything else. I mean, the balls this guy, the set of balls he has on, they should put in a wheelbarrow and carry him around the city. I mean, we talked about all week on Crain Company because people were saying, oh, Connor Wegman might start. We're like, how could you start Connor Wegman? You're undefeated with Marcel Reed. He hasn't turned the ball over. You just beat Arkansas, right, in Arlington. Like, if you start Connor Wegman and it goes bad and you lose this game, you're going to look like the town jester. But not only that, he looks like the king. That just goes to show you when you're not at practice, like it's such a different – there's so many different things that are going on that we don't see because we only see them once a week. And that's during the game. So he put Connor Wegman out there, and Connor freaked out in the best way possible. He must trust that injury now. There must be no lack of faith in it. Because that's the Connor Wegman we expected to see. That's the Connor Wegman that when we had David Pollock on before the Notre Dame game, was ranting and raving about because we saw those type things on film. And he was using his legs too. So now the conversation, we talked about it with Missouri and A&M, whoever wins this game coming out, we're going to have to start having a different conversation about a more championship, a high-class conversation. Maybe you can come to court next week. You know what I'm saying? Maybe all of a sudden, you're taking home a few more loaves of bread than you were the week before, and you're staying in some, castle by the sea that's not as nice as ours, but it's still a castle. So this A&M team, if they get that type of quarterback play, right, from Connor Wegman, with the way their schedule is set up, I had them going 10-2 before the year, and some people thought I was, on that ayahuasca, which I'm not anymore. But if it keeps going like this, I mean, this A&M team, Mike Elko's looking like, he's playing 4D chess, while a lot of other people are playing checkers. Let's see if they can keep it up, though.
Certainly, again, a big-time win for the Aggies. 31-point margin of victory in that one. Really quickly, Jake, before we move into Week 7, other major takeaways. Again, Auburn goes into Athens, loses, but a hard-fought game for sure. Ole Miss gets their bounce back. It's kind of funny how South Carolina.
Man, you didn't bring up South Carolina, Chris. I'm shocked.
No, we can talk about it. Not much to talk about other than Ole Miss dominating, I feel like.
Well,
I think South Carolina's got real problems on offense.
Last week.
Listen, Jake, there's people calling for Robbie Ashford to be QB1, if that tells you anything about where they are.
Yeah, you saw what happened when he came in for one play.
Right.
Listen, I'm from Auburn, buddy. I can tell you that story. And look, Robbie's a great guy, but I don't think that's the answer. Right. All last week, South Carolina fans were reaching out to me and reaching out to us on Crain Company saying, we deserve more respect than we're getting. We deserve more respect. We beat Kentucky 31-6. Now, they're conveniently forgetting that game day showed up the next week in Columbia for a game you once again lost to LSU. But this is why. This is why we weren't heaping praise on South Carolina before we saw them have another chance at home to earn our respect. This is why. And that game wasn't even close. That was an ass beating from the coin flip. And I think we found out a little bit more about Ole Miss's culture, maybe a little bit better than what some people who quit on him after the loss to Kentucky. That's why I didn't want to quit on him, Chris. And they still got to prove more. Like, you got to go to LSU this week. You go win that one, okay. All of a sudden, Kate Winslet moves her ass over and lets Leo on the floating door. Maybe we can both make it out of this thing alive instead of you being selfish. But when it comes to South Carolina, this is why that whole performance. And again, I hope Shane figures it out. But I'm not going to sit here and put a ton of respect on South Carolina's name when they don't ever win the big games that they get set up to win. It's Cocktober. All these recruits are committing. It's going to happen today. Ole Miss is licking their wounds. Then Juice Wells, we hate him, right? Who didn't play great, by the way. At least I didn't think so. But you dropped the ball 27-3 to 3. I don't know how you scored 3, to be honest with you. So save the respect thing. You got to go earn it. And guess what? Well, guess what you get this week? On the road at Bama, who just lost to Vandy. I hate to be that guy, but at some point, earn the respect. We're not just going to give it to you. Dylan Stewart's really good, even though he needs to stop celebrating like that, but he's really good.
Coming off the bye week, too, by the way. That was the other thing. Coming off the bye week, score 3 points.
You faked it. Shane, you never faked the first punt of the game.
That was probably the worst call of the Shane Beamer era.
It's like people that run a trick play on the first play of the game on offense. Right. Doug, that's all you want to know when the best time to run a trick play is? The second play of the game. Nobody ever expects it the second play of the game.
You never fake the first punt. That's the lesson of today's show. Never fake the first punt. We haven't touched on it, the final game, Jake. Florida very quietly gets a win they had to have. This was the
easiest money on the board.
This was the fired by Monday game if Billy Napier lost, but they get that 11-point win over UCF. Billy's just kind of hanging around, man. Just doing just enough. Hanging around.
Look, Billy woke up Sunday morning. Tennessee fans are pissed at Josh Heupel.
Yeah.
Bama fans are storming the mayor's house with pitchforks and torches. Florida State lost again. Miami snuck by Cal. Hugh Freeze is under fire. Shane Beamer's under fire. Billy Napier, probably that walk to get the biscuit on on Sunday morning was probably one of the best that Billy has had. But that's all we've said on the show. And you look at the rest of their schedule, it's probably there's no way I think he survives. But let him mess around and do something against Tennessee this week. What happens, Chris? What happens, Chris? They look a little vulnerable, which means Tennessee will win by 30, right? But just imagine that could be the worst thing that happened to Florida. If Florida were to find a way this weekend, all of a sudden, hey, you know, maybe he can stick around for another year. Why not? He's got another year on the lease, right? Just let him stick around for one more. Let's see. This schedule's brutal, right? Like I don't know. It's DJ Lagway, right? Well, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of a conflicted. I know for those fans down there, it's half of them are hoping what you said comes true, and the other half are hoping.
Yeah, it's like well, you like married a girl and turns out she's just is the worst. Like you're like, God, I'm just not gonna be happy with her. But then like you see some other couple arguing in Walmart, and that lady's even bigger, you know what, than yours is. Like maybe it could be worse. Like maybe I should this is it. Maybe this is marriage.
Jake, on that note, let's go to the Week 7 slate. We'll talk.
My marriage is fine, by the way. I just want to. I wasn't. My wife. No.
This isn't okay. I didn't think it was from firsthand experience.
No. There was. I give situations. We don't need to analyze this.
Good on you for clarifying. Smart of you, I think. Let's go to this Week 7 slate. We'll talk Tennessee, Florida in a second, but LSU Ole Miss is what I feel like, Jake, the feature matchup of the weekend. I'll be at this game in Baton Rouge, my first ever Death Valley at night experience. So pray for me this weekend. Should be a hell of a time. What are you seeing from this game? And LSU comes off the bye week, and Ole Miss, they got right against South Carolina, but this one's got the makings of a wacky Saturday night down in the Bayou, man.
Yeah, it's, early looking. I like the under in this game. I think it was at 64.5 or something like that. There's so many variables that go into this one, and we feel like, we have enough information about both of these teams. Ole Miss kind of bouncing back, understanding they still got to kind of thread the needle here on the way out and getting this win, on the road. Not that it would make up for the Kentucky loss, but you stack back-to-back road wins in this conference after losing a game at home. That can right the ship very quickly at the end of it when it comes down to running those numbers. But if you're LSU, I mean, again, you're undefeated in the SEC. You talk about a catapult game, and you look what you have coming down the stretch and the opportunities this could lead you to. LSU fans have got to be kind of licking their chops a little bit, knowing that Ole Miss, everybody's always gettable when you go to LSU. But I think this Ole Miss team, even with the performance last week, feels a little bit more gettable than what they were. What I'm interested to see in this battle of quarterbacks is, will Nussmeier make those big mistakes when he's under pressure from the blitz that we saw in the loss against USC, and he's gotten away with a couple, even though the competition has been down? You go back to the UCLA game, pressure gave him some problems and moments. And if I'm Ole Miss and I'm Pete Golding, knowing that he will throw the ball up, right? He will put the ball in harm's way. I've got to kind of try and take advantage of that a little bit and put him in situations, even in third and passing, where we may have to go skinny in the back end and not play too high to be able to try and force an early throw that he could throw right to us. I trust Ole Miss more than LSU in this spot. I really do. And you can make a very rational and logical argument for why LSU should beat Ole Miss. I think I could sit down and we can have a legitimate conversation about it. But when it comes down to it, I haven't seen either of these quarterbacks truly in big games be able to come through at an incredibly high level. I know the sample size is bigger on Dart than it is on Nussmeier, but a part of me just trusts Ole Miss and Jackson Dart more in this game. I think they're going to find a way, and until LSU proves to me that they can tackle in space against good competition, I've got to see it to believe it.
Jake, really quickly, counterpoint for you. There are 3 universal don'ts in life. You don't go to the apple orchard or the pumpkin patch on a college football Saturday. You surely don't do fall weddings. And you don't walk into Death Valley on a Saturday night and get the W, my friend. So
it's right, tough. It's tough. I mean, look, Brian Kelly and Lane Kiffin, somebody's got to win a big game. Somebody's got to win it. Like, you can't both lose.
Yeah. Who is less susceptible to making the critical mistake in the big
Yep.
game? That's the question. Let's go to the Red River Shootout, Jake, for the first time ever. This is an SEC matchup, Texas and Oklahoma. Texas, a 2-touchdown favorite in this one. I think I was told this is the second biggest spread ever in this rivalry game. Do you think Vegas is right? Do you think Texas runs away with this one? I mean, I think we all believe they're the supremely talented team. But Jake, I'll tell you, I've got Texas winning this game. But I am admittedly trying to think more outside of the box when it comes to predictions in games like these, because when it's too easy, it is, right? And even though what's the path to Oklahoma winning? It seems so unlikely. I think we'd be making a mistake to think there is no path. But, I mean, how do you see it? Do you think Texas runs away with it, or is it close?
I think it's got to be kind of on the Tennessee-Arkansas track, right, for Oklahoma to win this game. Quinn Ewers' health, he's going to play. It's almost like they kind of sat him for those 2 weeks and then the bye week to try and get him ready. Now, does that mean he'll make it through the whole game? Who the hell knows? I'm done trusting it. That's why I think I'm afraid to put Texas as an elite team, because I don't know if Quinn's going to be there. Arch has a bright future, but it's just not right now as far as winning a national championship. I think Oklahoma's got to dominate the time of possession in this game. You've got to keep Sarkisian and them off the field, because regardless of how good you're going to play defensively, he's going to catch you a couple times. But with Hawkins Jr. having the reps that he does, right, going into Auburn, coming in against Tennessee at the end there and having some success, the running element he brings, it kind of gives you a chance to possess that ball a little bit longer and run that clock and put even more game pressure on Texas. And it's a rivalry game. We've seen teams that are vastly outmatched find a way to not only stay in games, but win them. I would not be shocked if Oklahoma found a way to win this game, because they're playing with a little bit more house money than what Texas is. Nobody's expecting this Oklahoma team outside of their fan base to be able to make the playoff or make a run in the playoff. Texas is one of the favorites, especially now after what happened last weekend, to win the whole thing. So I think Oklahoma needs this game to be more low scoring. They need it to be kind of grimy, a little bit dirty, right? Come down to field goals in the red zone. If you move the ball in between the 20s, holding the other team to field goals instead of scoring touchdowns. So there's a path there, but it does feel like Texas is so complete as a team that they could do what Tennessee did to Oklahoma if it comes down to it, with the defense that we've seen with Texas travel. It wasn't just a one-trick pony. I still think they have a chance to be one of the best defenses in the country, and they can prove it again this weekend, even though the Oklahoma injury report at wide receiver, who's going to play. I like Texas to win the game, but I think Oklahoma covers that 14.5.
To your point, Jake, I think a great comparison, I've mentioned that this week too, the Tennessee-Oklahoma game. Could see it being sort of similar, where it's just Texas. They don't run away with it, but they're kind of like that boa constrictor. Eventually they're going to suffocate
and then
the life
hit
out
you
of
with
OU.
the big play, and now you got to play catch up, and it's just Oklahoma can win it, but it's a much narrower path, and it's an uglier path to victory than it just being clean and going out there and, hey, if we play clean, it'll take care of itself.
No doubt. Jake, to Rocky Top, we just kind of talked about this game a few minutes ago. Tennessee's in a spot coming home. They're licking their wounds, need to bounce back. Here comes the Florida Gators. We haven't talked about them in weeks. We pronounced Billy Napier as dead a few weeks ago, and they're a 15.5-point underdog in this game. Jake, they've won 17 of the last 20 matchups in this rivalry. I know all 3 wins came in Knoxville. But, yeah, to your point, this game, there's like a mental side of this, like the mental warfare. And I'm sure the guys on these rosters, maybe they don't care because, they don't care that it's 2003, the last time Tennessee won in the Swamp. Or they don't care what happened in 2008 or whatever. But still, just seems like weird stuff happens with Florida and Tennessee, man. A game Tennessee probably should win, but, I mean, when you look at this game, Jake, is it as simple as that?
Well, I think it's going to be tough for Florida to consistently move the ball against this Tennessee defense. It's going to be hard for anybody, even in the loss. I mean, Tennessee's defense did some really good things, and they're very talented. But if you're Florida, I think the opportunity you're sensing is Tennessee. It feels like after the Oklahoma game and now obviously the Arkansas game, is that maybe offensively they need to prove something. So you kind of have an idea of maybe how they're going to go. They want to, obviously prove to themselves they're the offense they think they can be, and they're a big play offense, and it's still fun to play in this system at Tennessee, and they still have a dynamic quarterback with guys on the outside that can make plays. So what are you thinking if you're Florida? It's like, well, I think you had a pretty good idea. They may attack the vertical third of us a lot in this game, and they should with some of the struggles that Florida's had in the secondary, and you should in general. But if you're Florida, you kind of feel like you may know a piece of this game plan puzzle. Maybe know a little bit more than you should at this point in the season going into this game. And maybe that can bait Nico into taking some chances he normally wouldn't take. Maybe he would throw into a couple coverages that he normally wouldn't throw into, or give guys chances that he normally wouldn't, or try and maybe make that throw over the middle on the run, going to his right that sails on him and goes right to the safety. So if you're Florida, maybe that leads to a couple turnovers that not only keeps you in the game, but puts Tennessee in a position to continue to doubt themselves after losing to Arkansas, that maybe we're not this elite team that everybody thought we were. Maybe we're not this elite team that we thought we were when Josh Heupel and Brew McCoy and Nico and Peyton Manning were walking out with Morgan Wallen, and wow, maybe we are fraudulent. And then all of a sudden you look up and it's halfway through the third quarter and Florida's up by 7, and now they believe, and they came into the game with nothing to lose. So yeah, if you're Florida, there's a couple things there to look at, but it still is Tennessee, and I think Josh Heupel is going to want to put his best foot forward this weekend. And just because Tennessee has problems doesn't mean that Florida still doesn't have problems. So it's going to be an interesting game, probably one I'm not going to bet.
Jake, not often do we make talking about a Vanderbilt game necessarily priority, but I have to ask, Vandy goes to Kentucky in a night game at Kroger Field. The challenge that Clark Lee faces this week is unlike any he's ever faced before. I don't know that Vandy and the boys ain't still partying down on Broadway. And
I wouldn't blame them if they were.
I wouldn't blame them if they were.
Yeah.
So when it comes to this game, I just wonder, is Vandy putting all their attention on Kentucky, or are they still looking back at what happened against Alabama? And then for Kentucky, obviously, coming off the bye, this is one certainly they look at as a must-win. So it's just kind of a fascinating dynamic in Lexington this weekend where –
So you're asking me how well does Vanderbilt handle prosperity?
Right, exactly.
Well, I think you can look back a little bit this year. They beat Virginia Tech to open up the season, and then you lose to Georgia State. So we've seen them handle a little bit of prosperity in a bad way. Now you get your second bite at the apple, but this is a little bit of a different prosperity. This isn't, oh, hey, we just took over Guatemala. This is, oh, my God, we just beat the British, and now we have our own country. Like, that's a little bit of different scenario there. But this is where, Clark Lee and even in the bad times going about things the same way, that's what you lean back on. Hey, nothing is going to change in our prep. If we have lost to Georgia State or we beat Alabama, we've still got to do the things. It's about us, right? That's the whole situation. So it's about us. So look, Kentucky beating Ole Miss helps. I think Vandy is going to be able to move on because maybe they do want a little bit more. Maybe they're seeing an avenue to something that, Vandy didn't even think they could look at.
Doubt Diego Pavia at your own risk. Finally, Jake, I got to ask you about this game in Tuscaloosa. It's the one that'll kick off today. Alabama, welcome to college football in 2024. The South Carolina Gamecocks travel to Tuscaloosa to face an Alabama team coming off a loss to Vandy. Imagine me telling you that storyline over the summer. Poor South Carolina having to face Alabama. I'm seeing Bama guys quote, we're going to get back to playing Alabama football. Like, I promise we're going to make the fans proud on Saturday. And, Jake, I know talk during the week is cheap, but I'm seeing all that, and I'm like, man, poor Shane Beamer in South Carolina going to get Bama's best shot.
Yeah, this is, you always kind of want to, if you're fighting the big bad bully on the block, to be the first one that sneaks him. Like hits him when he says didn't expect you to hit him after he said something, but then you beat him up. Like, this is like the kid who, after the bully got beat up the day before, tries to go beat him up the second day because he's been picking on him too. And now he's ready for it. And he's twice your size. And, you're in a trash can, and then, you're getting a swirly. I just don't see this ending good for South Carolina. This is not this is not the situation Shane Beamer and them wanted. You really never want to walk into this situation, but this is not the things that Jalen Milroe will do in this game. Does this give you a little bit? And I know it's different scenarios, and I don't think Alabama's going to go on to win the national championship, at least not yet. But this kind of gives me those vibes when Florida lost to Ole Miss, and Tebow was like on the podium, like you will never see anybody work as hard. I'm going to go freak out and just walk around, point at people and stuff, and tell them good things about themselves. But no, this is not a good situation for South Carolina.
Yeah, it's all of that without the promise from Milroe, unless he's made one that I have not seen. So, Jake Crain of Crain Company, always a pleasure. And, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, this is what I was going to say. South Carolina, Jake, good chance they're playing Oklahoma next week on the road after they come off a loss to their arch rival. So, let the good times roll, baby. Yeah. Let the good times roll.
Yay, football season.
It's funny how some fan bases feel that way at about the midway point. Jake Crain Company again. Jake, in case folks have been living under a rock, let them know what y'all got going on.
Yeah, look, it's really simple. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, however you consume your college football and sports content. You can find us. It's Crain Company, CRAIN and Company. We're live 2 to 3:30 p.m. Central. We have live calls, a live chat. A lot to get to, breaking down a lot of games, talking about what's going on, just the madness around this year of college football, and we're barely even halfway through it. So, Chris, as usual, thanks for having me, bud.
Absolutely, man. Jake, enjoy the slate that it feels like we've all been waiting to get to this college football season.
You know I'm a you know what for a good slate. You know that.
Appreciate you, Jake.
See you, buddy.